republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, well, thank you for being here this evening. As we share the proposed district budget for the 2019-2020 school year. Before we review the information you came for, I would like to share a brief video that was made by the students in our video production course at the high school, guided by technology teacher Ron Weber and English teacher Tina Schaefer. Over the last few years, as our photography courses have grown, our high school team has dabbled in activities that extend our offerings in this genre. And this year, the students began to live stream announcements on Fridays, as well as events such as concerts, Parent Academy workshops, and assembly program. And you can find that on the district website, those things that have been live streamed over the last few months. Tonight, you'll see a compilation of what's going on in our schools throughout the district, including some of the finished bond projects. This is in no way inclusive of everything, but gives you an idea of the great work being done by our students and instructional team, and made possible by the support of the community. So, first year at this from our video production class. Take a look. Bottom left. No, all the way over left. That's what I did. Oh, okay. Working. Let's see. Okay, let's save the jokes for when we go home. Let's be all real and no pranks today. What is happening to the cardboard? Are they moving? Okay, let's go. Put
We both live in America now.
Kitchen, where superheroes are made, where every meal is a choose-your-own adventure. If you've ever wanted to be the first person on Mars,
what number was that? 5, good. Here, that, put on a hat. Okay, cheese.
Doing saves the writings on what age kids should be starting social media and if kids should have social media. girl was the head of snacks. What do you like about Beach Street Middle School?
How fun and kind all the teachers are.
What do you like about Beach Street Middle School?
I like science.
What do you like about Beach Street Middle School?
Mr. Sharp.
What do you like about Beach Street Middle School?
Lunch.
Well, again, if a 6 on the Richter scale to go to a 7 would be 30 times stronger, which I can't actually mathematically know how much I'm shaking, but you have to imagine, if it was shaking this much, 30 times is a lot. Yes? So here we go.
Welcome to Lions News for February 8th, 2019. This broadcast is coming to you from the photo video studio in the high school.
I'm really proud of what they did, because and they were already talking about what their plan is for next year, and you know, from going from nothing to this in one short year, I think is simply amazing. So a lot of credit to the teachers that are involved and to the kids that took this on.
You gotta get that up on the website.
Yep, it will be. He's going to provide us with a link, and Joanne will post it tomorrow. So. What I found interesting was how many things I had forgotten that we've been doing over time. we developed this budget, we centered our work around our mission statement and some guiding principles that support the idea that West Islip has 21st century vision. And hopefully you saw some examples of that in the previous video that we just had an opportunity to share with you. We know that our community supports and values public education, and we have made choices that ensure that we safeguard our schools and programs for not only the upcoming school year, but for years to come. Our incoming kindergartners are with us for 13 years, so we need to ensure that each child leaves our school system with the skills to successfully pursue his or her dream. We also know that there's more to education than what happens in the classroom, so our choices in this budget reflect that. But research has also shown that the basic skills, reading, writing, and math, are still the best foundation for continued learning and growth, but now they are just the first step. Students, now, next year, and in the future, will also need the 4 C's: coding, communications, creativity, and collaboration. And as we developed this budget, we kept that in mind. We kept the future in mind, because we know that what we plan for this upcoming school year affects years far beyond 2019-20. So these are the projected average class sizes for the upcoming school year. They are still in flux as we continue to have our CSE, CPSE meetings as students leave us to move to other locations. Other students are joining us. But they are consistent across the district, as you can see, and they do reflect what we know to be best practice for instructing children. Budget preparation is not an easy task, and over the last few months, the administrative team has spent countless hours considering needs, both short and long term, district building and department goals, and public feedback that is received throughout the year. They, along with the Board of Education, have worked carefully to craft a budget that's attentive to addressing the curricular and instructional needs within our classrooms, security concerns, as well as the various maintenance issues within and across the district. Much has been accomplished in these regards over the last few years, but there is still more work to do. So in addition to maintaining our curricular and extracurricular programs, we've included a number of items in this proposed budget that will allow us to expand what we do in the classrooms, libraries, labs, music rooms, and on the athletic fields, and of course, will help us to continue to develop our technology initiative. This slide and the next summarize the key items that are funded in this budget. Some expand on current initiatives, such as providing access to Chromebooks or iPad devices to our youngest learners, replenish our smart boards, enhance our mental health programs. We are hopeful that an Executive Director of Human Resources will support the efforts of our administrators and streamline various functions as the state continues to impose mandates that require more time and effort of all of our instructional staff members. We know that a district-run pre-kindergarten program is the most effective way to support our preschoolers and ensure that they're ready for prime time. So this budget provides for a pre-K program, 2 half-day sessions in each of our 4 elementary schools. Some items have been put off for a long time and are not recurring expenses, such as the transportation garage doors. Others provide our security team with the tools and equipment they need to ensure our facilities are secure and our students and staff are safe. And you can see that in the extended security guard coverage, ID badges for our middle school students, and some additional transportation mechanisms for our security staff. So at this time, I will turn the presentation over to Mrs. Pilati, Assistant Superintendent for Business, who will speak to the propositions on the ballot this year.
This year, as our residents head to the polls on May 21st, they will see 3 propositions on the ballot. The first, of course, as every year, you will see the school budget for next year, which is $125,903,812. Proposition 2 relates to the establishment of a capital reserve fund, and the third proposition relates to voter registration. Voters will also be asked to elect 3 Board of Education members for a 3-year term, and they are Mr. Campitello, Ms. LaRosa, and Mr. McCann. next year represents a 2.41% increase over the prior year. And New York State education law actually requires us to present our budget into three parts: our program, administrative, and capital components of the budget. Our program is the biggest piece of the pie you see up there. That represents 73.54% of all of our spending. And program relates to all instructional related expenses, which include our special education costs, our extracurricular costs, our sports, and all of the district's transportation costs. The administrative piece is the smallest piece of the pie. It's about 10.47%. That relates to all of our administrative expenses, as well as school board expenses and most of the legal fees that the district incurs. And lastly, our capital component represents just under 16%, and that relates to the operation and maintenance of all of our school buildings, as well as any debt-related costs that we incur. One of the first things we have to do in our budget process is to set the allowable tax levy limit. We use the Office of the State Comptroller's multi-step formula to develop our restricted tax levy. And once again, we are within our allowable tax levy. Our levy for 1920 is $85,505,745. This represents a 2.37% increase over the prior year. Now, whenever we set our tax levy, everyone would always like to know what the implication is to themselves and how it affects their taxes. In order to calculate the actual tax rate increase, you would need three numbers. There's only one number that the school districts provide, which is the tax levy, and we know that's the $85 million. However, you also need the assessed value of your home, as well as the homestead percentages. Those values for next year don't come out until the early fall. So in order to provide an estimate to our homeowners, we use the assessed values and the homestead percentages from the current year. We take the average assessed home of $45,000 in West Islip, and we came up with an increase for the average home of $199 for next year, or a 2.37% increase in their taxes. This is a summary of our budget formula, and as I mentioned, we start off with our restricted tax levy. Our levy is increasing 2.37%. We then have to add in all of our projected state aid for next year, which we're looking at an increase of 2.92% for our state aid, which is coming in about $35.5 million. We also have to add in all of our other revenues that we're expected to receive next year. That could include things such as interest income, our rental incomes from the buildings, as well as non-resident tuition. We lastly add in our appropriated fund balance, which is going to be decreasing by 10% for next year. And what we're left with, the remainder, is our expenditure plan for next year, our budget of $125 million, and that's an increase of 2.41%. As I mentioned, we have two other propositions on our ballot this year. The first relates to the establishment of a capital reserve. And just to give some background, all school districts essentially have reserve funds. In West Islip, we have 4 currently. The first being an employee benefit accrued liability reserve. That is essentially for the payment of any accrued days that an employee earns during their employment that they are due upon retirement or termination. The retirement contribution reserve is for the payment of retirement contributions for the ERS system. And it's important to mention that with this new enacted budget, we are now able to create a sub-fund in this reserve, the retirement contribution, related to TRS expenses. All of our instructional employees fall under the TRS system. And lastly, we have a workman's compensation and unemployment reserve fund. With this proposition, we are looking to establish a capital reserve fund. A capital reserve allows us to save money for future capital projects that would otherwise have to be funded through the budget or bonds. And it's important to note that our budgets are created with several estimates. As an example, health insurance changes, the premium rates change every January. Since we're not privy to what the rate is going to be for next January in the last 6 months of our fiscal year, we have to use historical trends to estimate what the rate will be. At year end, all school districts take their remaining surplus funds and allocate them to reserves. So in a similar fashion to what we already do, any surplus funds will be able to fund the capital reserve. So this is at no additional cost to the taxpayers. And a capital reserve does differ slightly from the other reserve funds in that we need voter authorization not only to establish a capital reserve, but also to expend the funds from this reserve. So if we would like to do a project, let's say in a year or two, we actually have to go back out to the voters, explain exactly what project we would like to do with an estimated cost, and get voter approval. So it would likely appear on another proposition in May. Our last proposition relates to voter registration. Currently, we only allow our residents to register to vote 1 day per year for 6 hours. This proposition would actually authorize our district clerk to conduct voter registration between the hours of 8 and 4 whenever school is in session, which makes it much more convenient for our residents. We provide several budget communication items for our residents. The required informational notice, which is referred to as a 6-day notice, is a postcard. This year you'll notice when you get it, it's actually presented in Spanish and English, and that's because it is now required by law for us to present our information for this notice in English and Spanish. Our annual budget newsletter was mailed out earlier this week, and that is also available in Spanish, but that's on the website. Or you can have give us a call, the district clerk a call, and she can mail that to you. And lastly, our budget books that we put together are available on our website as well, and every district building in their main office has a copy of the budget book, as well as the West Islip Public Library. And this budget book includes required disclosure items such as our full expenditure and revenue budget, our real property tax report card, our salary disclosure notice, as well as our fiscal accountability statements and our school report card, and the impact report. As you can see with our budget timeline, the last remaining date is May 21st, which is our annual budget vote, which will take place in the high school gymnasium between 7 and 9 p.m.